Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before episode 3 for The Acolyte aired, and immediately after the poor reception of episodes 1 and 2 of The Acolyte began hitting social media, the fans were attacked. Again. Disney Kathleen Kennedy herself, Leslye Headland, writer and director of the series, Amanda Stenberg, the main star of the show, all of them had spin and blame to give out towards the majority of the people who were still invested enough in Star Wars to 1. Watch the show, and 2. Spend their time actually reviewing it. People like me. We were first accused of review bombing the show. In reality, what that means is that the show was so god-awful that it received massive negative reviews. If the show was any good, it would have been positively reviewed in a massive way, but it wasn't. It was shit. Furiosa came out a few weeks ago. It flopped, but it received massive positive reviews. What's the excuse there? Only when Lucasfilm fails, and they fail often, do they go to their standard PR playbook, blame the fans for being racists and bigots, call the reviews fake news, and then lie about the ratings. Which is where we ended up last week. Supposedly, The Acolyte is the most watched premiere on D+ this year, which I think the only other live-action D+ series they had was Echo. And that was back in January and wasn't very good either. Now, what I find weird is that I can only find data that is repeated over and over by the access media. The people paid to like things made by Disney so they can have early access to review them and get interviews and all that BS. So, 4.8 million views on the first day. Okay. 11.1 million since its premiere. Okay. Got it. My question, are you only counting episode 1 or are you combining the numbers for episode 1 and 2 together and calling it just a total? No one can seem to answer that question. No one even mentions episode 2 when talking about the ratings, and it came out on the same day. I'm a well-educated man in politics and corporate procedures. It was my life for 22 years. And this looks like and smells like spin and misdirection. Until I see the breakdown of episode 1 separately from episode 2 from a third party, I will continue to doubt the numbers being given to us. With that, let's get into episode 3. This one broke even me. I'm a diehard that has been holding on, not abandoning Star Wars even after all the crap that has been thrown at me. I wholeheartedly believed it could survive, that it could be revived. I was wrong. I finally have to give up the fight and admit to myself what all of you already know. Star Wars is dead. And it is no accident that this series premiered in the middle of Gay Pride Month. The Acolyte is basically Leslye Headland's lesbian fantasy in space. It is a far-left progressive agenda wrapped in the cosplay of Star Wars and signals the end of any fidelity to the source material in any way, shape, or form. But let's get into the plot. This episode is a flashback in the life of May and Osha when they were children, long before the events of episode 1 and 2. It basically tells the story of how a coven of lesbian witches who used the Force to create children created May and Osha so they can continue on the tradition of the coven and protect the secrets. So I guess it works like this. Mother 1 uses the Force to impregnate Mother 2. Therefore, the idea of the Chosen One, the prophecy that gave us Anakin and the whole Skywalker saga, is no longer a thing now. So if that is how it works, and if that is now how Shmi Skywalker got pregnant because the Acolyte is canon, and Shmi was not aware of it at the time, what exactly are we implying here? But I'll leave that where it is. Getting back to the twins, they're the only 2 children in the coven. They are heralded as a miracle. And as Mother Number 1 says, I created them. To which Mother Number 2 responds, I carried them. And all of this is in preparation for a ceremony called the Ascension, where May and Osha will have membership into the coven bestowed upon them and they can officially be called witches. However, there are 4 Jedi on the planet because they have heard about this coven training children in the ways of the Force, alternative ways of the Force, and they are there to remind this coven of lesbians that this is against the law of the Republic and that they want to test the children to see if they will become Jedi candidates. So they crash the ceremony by just walking into the Fortress of the Witches without any problem and create a conflict. And yep, you already guessed it, the 4 Jedi are the same ones adult May is hunting down, already killing one of them, Carrie-Anne Moss's Jedi character, and influencing one into taking himself out, leaving only the Wookiee Jedi and Master Saul. At this point, you can cue the melodrama. May wants to stay and be a witch, and she wants Osha to stay too because of reasons, I guess. Osha wants to explore other options and leave the coven and become a Jedi. So, after much identity politics, which we will get into, Osha prepares to leave with Master Saul, which causes May to become a complete psychopath, setting fire to the coven's fortress. apparently slaughtering all the other members of the coven in an attempt to make her sister stay with her. And yeah, I can't explain it either. You want to keep your sister with you, so killing everybody is your next logical conclusion to make that happen. So I guess the message is when confused prepubescent children are forced into an ideology and then become fearful of being alone, they become mass murderers? I'm not sure how that works, but the bodies of all the witches lying on the ground, they were not burnt, therefore they must have been killed some other way. And note to the writers, the fortress of the coven is made of rock. Rock does not light on fire. It seems this series has a real problem with simple things like what materials are actually flammable and fire needing oxygen to exist. Anyways, so 12-year-old Psycho May falls into an abyss of fire and death, only to reappear fine a few minutes later, and Osha is rescued by Saul and taken away. Episode done. This may be the most unintentionally funniest show I've ever watched because it is so incompetently executed on all levels, including the attempt at metaphor for current day social issues. Never mind the terrible acting, the terrible writing, terrible direction. What we get in episode 3 is an allegory for the current debate over exposing children to LGBTQIA++ whatever sexual identities and influencing them to adhere to those standards in the school system. That is one of the many political and social messages being peddled by this episode, this series, and now unmistakably by Bob Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, and Disney as a corporation. Want more? Obviously, the Jedi are now the bad guys, according to Lucasfilm. After all, they are the ones who separate children from their families arbitrarily. I wonder where I've heard that one before. They are a narrow-minded, overbearing, child protective custody police force completely overstepping their bounds into the family unit because their conservative rules and ways will not allow the lesbians to create more lesbians in their image. Seriously, what an absolutely ridiculous sequence when the ceremony of ascension was presented to us as an audience. First off, were they praying? Were they coming? Were they having a group seizure? It was something out of a bad 1970s B horror movie about witches and cults. Something I would expect to see on Mystery Science Theater 3000. The only difference was better production values. And the whole thing was presented as a symbol of a group of individuals who wanted a safe space to occupy to be themselves, only to have the evil Jedi invade it and try to rip it all away. It was a cringe fest that was purposefully written to denigrate any film or show that came before it, the traditional fan base, and any hope of having something worthy of the name Star Wars ever again. Now, according to this series, which is canon, the Force is not a power to wield because lesbians know better than the evil Jedi, so everything Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Luke Skywalker preached as teachers of the Force was a misuse, an abuse of the Force. I mean, no kidding. What else could you expect from a bunch of stupid males? The word ignorant is actually used by the writers to describe any Jedi in Star Wars that you've seen before, completely wiping away all of the world building done by George Lucas in a span of 30 minutes. Episode 3 of The Acolyte also teaches us that the authority figures, and in this case the Jedi, who are the ultimate representation of an authority system, should be lied to because, quote, the truth will only make things more complicated, end quote. One of the mothers actually says this to the twin children. You know, authority figures like your parents, because lying to your parents about how you self-identify in school is simpler and safer for everyone rather than an open and honest discussion. And don't forget, it's because of groups like the Jedi that, quote, the galaxy is not a safe place that welcomes women like us. Because of their identity, these different women have been, quote, hunted, persecuted, and forced into hiding. Want more? The other main message of one of the mothers of the twins, individuality is bad. Groupthink is the way to go. Can't have any independent thought outside of the echo chamber that is the message. Being an individual is bad. Thinking for yourself is bad. And of course, she's right, because the evil Jedi did invade their ascension ritual. They did invade their safe space in order to reason with the children with logic and compassion and offer a worldview that is not restricted by an extreme ideology. And when one of the twins does want to explore something other than being a lesbian witch living in a coven, having forced babies with other women, what is the reaction of the second mother? Quote, that man used his mind tricks on her. So yeah, Star Wars is dead. This coming from someone who, like I said, up until 2 weeks ago, would tell you that there is still hope for Star Wars. Not all is lost. I was wrong. I was being foolish. I was not thinking clearly, blinded by my own fandom. But after this episode, after the entirety of the Skywalker saga has been obliterated in the name of gender identity politics, it's time to call in the coroner for me and officially call the time of death for my fandom at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on June 11th, 2024. What once was a saga filled with hope and a message about good triumphing over evil has become a partisan political messaging board written, directed, and produced by activists instead of entertainers. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Did you watch episode 3? Did you catch what I caught? Or do you think I'm wrong? As always, I'm still your reluctant Gringo, and from south of the border, salud and a huevo.